Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roane Hunter. Let's jump right in. Before we go too far in this episode, the first thing I want to do is something that we are terrible at doing, and that is to acknowledge this podcast is called the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, but the book came first. It is a resource that is available on Amazon, wherever books are sold. It's an incredible read and details the story, basically, of Roane and Eva and their relationship, but most importantly, their steps, their path to healing that has been vetted over, well, we'll leave the decade number out of there for the two of you guys. But this is a tried and true system, and we just want to encourage our listeners to take advantage of that resource. Certainly keep listening to the podcast, but in between those listens, to be able to open that resource either by yourself or with a partner. What an excellent step to take on your journey to health and your journey to growth. We highly recommend it, as do many people on Amazon. Most of those are just run with fake accounts, but there are some true recommends in there.
Whatever it takes, right? And another thing, again, just forget to mention this, but also, even I do couples intensives. My son and I do men's intensives. Eva does partner intensives. And you can go to the website, which is just LifeWorks, all one word, LifeWorks.ms. That's for Mississippi. And you can see the dates, and you can sign up for the intensives there on the website. And those are, those are a powerful way to really do a lot of work in a short amount of time.
That's it.
I don't think there's any better avenue than these intensives to really jumpstart a couple, an individual on the path of healing and growth. There's nothing better. So go to the website and check those out.
Yeah, here. We would definitely celebrate this resource in the podcast as an entry point, a very calorie dense entry point, a very helpful entry point. But what is broken in relationship must heal in relationship. And you don't have a relationship with the podcast, but when you attend these intensives or you develop a relationship with a healthy therapist, those things are entering into a relationship where these parts of your life that are broken in ways that you feel like just can never be put back together. That's where that actually happens. So I would encourage you to take advantage of all the resources that are available on LifeWorks.ms. So today, this conversation is going to get, I believe, a little bit dicey because what we're talking about sounds like we're talking about the same thing, but we're not. So
right.
It gets to be a little bit problematic. And I can tell you in my personal experience has caused a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, and just to set the stage, a lot of unintended hurt. And doesn't that suck when we do that to someone?
Mm-hmm.
We are unintentionally hurting you, especially on the heels of actually intentionally hurting you. So I would love to just be a fly on the wall for a moment as you guys discuss this idea that we're launching out today. And Eva, I think one of our most popular episodes is the Eva quotes. And, you came back from a conference and you're just like double barrel, just pow, 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 So if we could start this episode with a quote that's meaningful for you around this idea and just see where it goes.
Yeah, so this is something I read recently, and it just so resonated with me. And this is what it said. I used to think honesty was what I needed in any form of relationship until I realized it is transparency. Honesty is answering when you are asked. Transparency is telling the truth without being asked.
Well, yeah, that's a powerful quote for sure.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things we hear often. It's like, well, he's not being honest. Well, that depends. In a way. And And I'll use the term on the addict side of the fence. We are very vague. What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness, and we will withhold a lot of information. And
the partner
that's
really doesn't know what questions to ask.
right. And so transparency is just like being an open book. I've got nothing to hide. I hide nothing. And that's not just around sexual acting out behaviors. That's just around being a good partner. I'm going to tell Eva, on my way home I stopped and got a Diet Coke at the Quick Stop. I mean, it's just being more intentional about what's really going on in my life, rather than withholding information, getting up in my head. And as Eva said, so often the wife doesn't know. And again, I should say partner because it works both ways with betrayed partners. But she doesn't know what questions to ask, because she doesn't know, because I am withholding. I'm not being transparent, because part of it is when if in addiction mindset, I don't want her asking questions, right? The fewer questions I get, the better I am, because I'm probably going to have to start lying, and then I'm going to double down and I'm going to dig the hole deeper. And so this honesty versus transparency is an important thing to grasp, to understand. What does it mean just to live transparent versus being honest or dishonest?
Right. I know too, for me as a partner, it's been a growth area to really go vulnerable. When I go vulnerable, I'm transparent. Transparency and vulnerability go hand in hand. And that's hard sometimes. You don't really want to show the underbelly. You don't want to really show your weakness, your insecurity, your fears. You don't really want to show, at least for me. That's hard for me to show.
Yeah, I think
But
often too, it comes down to the fact that a lot on the masculine side of the relationship, I don't I don't really know what that is. I don't know what those are, right? I know how to be honest about facts, but if you're
right.
asking me to be transparent about feelings, I don't know how to do that. So I'm
Uh-huh.
going to react in some probably exaggerated negative way towards you pushing me towards transparency, and I'm going to go as hard as I can towards honesty. And some of that honesty can even be damaging to your partner. So it's a little bit of a catch 22. And I just want to have a sense of compassion here to the people who are like, man, I'm sitting with the therapist and I'm sitting with my spouse and I'm being asked to be transparent. And I don't even know what it is you're asking me to do because I don't have
Mm-hmm.
anything to say. I'm just going to sit here, and I don't know how many dollars are spent by insurance companies, even private money, in total silence in a therapist office. Like
Silence. Yeah.
there are no words being exchanged. We don't want to talk about what the therapist is doing in the back of their mind, like planning their afternoon. But
Making a grocery list. Yeah.
that's exactly right. Yeah, but Eva, as you're talking about it, the transparency and the vulnerability, the first thing I thought was no wonder I felt like my goose was cooked when we started getting over into that side of things. So I just wasn't really that equipped, I think, to do that. Do you guys find that to be true, that there are
Yes.
good-hearted people that just they're not
Yes.
necessarily withholding transparency, they just don't know what that means?
There's just not enough self-awareness in the beginning.
Okay, this leads me
They
to a
Yep.
follow-up question. So,
Okay.
if in that circumstance, you guys as helpers start to try to raise the self-awareness of the person who has done the thing, is
Mm.
that ever interpreted as negative by this? Like, you're supposed to be letting this guy have it. You're supposed to be letting her have it. She's why we're here. He is why we're here. Why are you helping them? Like, it feels like you're coddling
Mm.
them. Does that situation come up?
Well, I'll let you answer that, Ron. I think we kind of set it up. We set the stage to say, we want both of you to do the work, right? And so to help you understand the setup, what got you here?
Yeah, and Eva touched on this, but that the lack of awareness is the biggest piece, I think.
Me too.
And just
Me
in
too.
working with men, being you and I talk about this often, just in our work with men. Most guys, their biggest problem is a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
And awareness is kind of the ground of all our dis-ease and brokenness. We're just unaware. And so as we begin the journey of self-reflection, introspection, beginning to figure ourselves out, well, just by default, we're going to hopefully we're going to uncover some feelings and emotions. And I tell guys all the time, the goal in this is not to begin to start emoting everywhere, because that kind of looks pathetic, but it's more about I need to be aware of what's going on inside of me, in order to even be able to emotionally regulate. Because if I'm just reacting and I'm getting defensive and puffing up and perpetrating, then there's a lack of awareness of, like, what is this tapping into? And then, as you said, Eva, earlier, and this took a lot of years, but just being able for the partner to go vulnerable, because it's a vulnerable place, to just say, "Hey, I'm really afraid right now. I'm scared. I need reassurance." And that's just simply beginning to ask for what you need. But oftentimes, I
And
think, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. But also what would happen to me, I would get emotionally flooded if I even tried to go vulnerable. And when most people get emotionally flooded, tears come. Especially for women, tears will come. And Roane, you would take that many times, my tears, as manipulation, right? But actually I was emotionally flooded. And so then you would get frustrated with me because of my tears, and I couldn't really come up with the language or the words to express myself about what it was was really deeply wounding me, what was hurting me so much. I do think, what is available today, especially for partners and for men and for the one who's acted out, is that there is a lot of information to help people understand what has happened to them. There's books written about it. There's podcasts. There's all kinds of things that help people have a language. But I know early on, all I could really show were tears. And sometimes those were tears of anger. Sometimes those were tears of sadness. Many, many, many times they were tears of fear, a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you
And
bring up an excellent
yeah,
point in that, and I'm one of those guys, like, I'm always looking for the escape hatch, really, because I'm so conflict averse. And I would love to just fall on the sword of, like, oh, I don't really know how to do this. No one ever taught me. It's a very safe place to be. But at these junctures, especially today, it's like, I don't know that I'm buying that. If you've got TikTok and you've got Apple Podcasts and you have a bookstore
True.
within a 500-mile radius of where you live, this is kind of on you a little bit, right? I mean,
That's right.
yes.
and we say that to the guys that are, hobbling up to a deck, obviously through a mode of compassion, right? I mean, we don't just start hitting people in the face, but at some point we do have to say, okay, you are being asked to be transparent, and we can layer things on top of that. You are staying honest about the facts, but you're not being transparent about the impact. And that's what we're going to talk about, because this is session, 37 this year, and it's kind of time we get there. Right. But I do think, to get back to the original quote, I think there is this longing inside of a couple, especially those that have experienced betrayal, that honesty will equal intimacy.
That's
But it
right.
just doesn't work that way.
So true.
So
Yeah.
true. No.
Well, and
And we will say many times, don't we, Ron? We say many times, the questions need to lower, and the sharing increases from both
yeah.
parties. Yeah. The
Yeah.
vulnerability, the transparency.
Well, and the vulnerability piece, that's a growth area on both sides of the fence.
It is.
And again, just going back to our relationship, Eva had a hard time going vulnerable because going angry was much more
Powerful.
known for her, modeled for her, and much more. You're in a power position when you go to
Yeah.
anger.
Mhm.
And when you've kind of been, had the rug ripped out from under you, and you're powerless because you realize you've got no control over another human being at all. Well, anger is a very safe place to go.
Mhm.
And then questions too. I mean, questions in and of themselves, that's a defensive mechanism. Is like, because like, where have you been? What have you been doing? Rather than, I'm afraid because I don't know where you've been. I don't know what you're doing. Can you share with me? And putting yourself in that position is risky when you've been betrayed. I mean, there's no other way
Really,
around it.
Roane, just what you said, I had no language like that, did I?
Right.
Like,
No.
and many times you would need to coach me, even if you would say it like this, I think I can move into that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That never even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was a huge place of growth in my own marriage, actually, where when my wife would approach me out of anger, I finally figured out through therapy and through actually men's community, to be able to look at her and say, when you approach me that way, I see this person and I can't hear what you're telling me. I see my mother. I see my coach. I see my brother. Like these images rush on me, and I'm so taken back to an anger-dominated adolescence, and not just inside my home, just all around, that I lose the message. So this isn't on you. This is on me. And I think if we're talking about honesty versus transparency, well, I could be honest about whatever you're mad about. Like, well, guess what? I'm mad back. I'm being honest,
Yes.
But transparency is to be able to say, man, when this happens, I feel this particular way. I don't know how to button that up, and I don't know where that leaves us, but I do understand, and I think this episode is going to help people today with this. I do understand that transparency in its own right is valuable. It is a step forward, even if it doesn't make things feel better or get more clean before we get to our appointment with our therapist this week.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
This episode of Sex, God, and Chaos is brought to you by the Samson Society, a community of men who are tired of pretending and ready to start living in the light. For a lot of us, the hardest part of change isn't admitting we have a problem, it's believing we don't have to face it alone. That's what Samson Society is all about: brotherhood, honesty, and grace for men walking through struggles. There's no judgment, no posturing, and no perfect people allowed. Just men showing up, telling the truth, and finding freedom together. Whether you're a pastor, a husband, a businessman, or a guy who's just tired of being stuck, you'll find people who get it and who won't let you stay where you are. It's a place where every man has a place at the table. If you're ready to stop hiding and start healing, visit SamsonSociety.com. That's SamsonSociety.com, because isolation destroys men, but brotherhood brings them back to life.
Well, and so often in our, in the hippocampus, the brain center for memory and emotion, I think Gabor Mate talks about this in his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. But so often what we remember are the emotions. It's not even necessarily the memory of some event. And so if I remember in my brain, in the hippocampus, if I remember this emotion of anger wrapped around and I can't even remember the event, but boy, I remember that emotion and I feel that emotion. And like for me, there was a lot of anger kind of sometimes above the surface, below the surface in my home I grew up in. Whether that was brothers, that was always above the surface, fighting and all the stuff that we did. And then with like when my mother, it was under the surface, a lot of passive aggressive. The anger was there. And then was step person, again, just an angry individual. And my dad, he'd never met an emotion he could regulate, and his go-to was just boom, get angry. And so like and so I marry Eva, and so that memory of that emotion of anger, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, you talk about amygdala activation, fight, flight, or freeze. I can do all three in the same moment because it was so prevalent and so deeply embedded. And that's why it's so important to begin to understand each other's backstory in the work, as we call it, in working through your own trauma, in beginning to understand, man, why am I so reactive with just, her tears, her being upset about nothing, but yet it's like DEFCON 5, right? But that's because of what's going on in the brain. And then we're just taken back into it. And then it takes a lot of self-awareness, beginning to really understand what is going on inside of me right now in this moment. And I mean, I'm not, believe me, I'm not sitting here today and saying I have mastered it and I am a ninja. No, I can get hooked into it. Hopefully not after we're done recording this podcast, but I think I'm better at it. At least being able to slow it down and go, why am I reacting right now? But boy, that flooding that occurs happens on both sides of the fence for the partner and the betrayer.
See, I had to get to the place where I really understood why Roane withdrawing and going silent, what that would make me so angry, and I would pursue, and as an adult, nobody was going to abandon me, was my thinking. No one will abandon me. But as a little girl, I was abandoned a lot, emotionally, sometimes physically abandoned. I never connected how my fear of abandonment came from childhood. Right. And so in our relationship, Roane contributed to that by withdrawing, by getting away from my tears or my anger or whatever it was. But it would tap into that fear of abandonment. I can remember vividly when I made that connection, but that took time to make that connection, to understand it, why that had such an effect on me. The amygdala hijack, for sure.
It's so interesting to hear you guys discuss this, and I know even our listeners are probably already there, but isn't it interesting that marriage will put you in a position where you are stepping on the other person's history?
Oh, yes,
so
for
often.
Sure.
so
often.
Oh,
so often. And
yeah.
my wife is an Enneagram 9, and for her to get angry, it takes a lot of work. I mean, it takes a lot of work for her to get angry. But when I realized
with that,
when I realized this isn't even really about my wife at all, it's about me. I had I would say conservatively 13 to 15 years of our marriage, I had put her in a position where she had to use anger to be heard, because that's how my family of origin operated. Like, we're just kind of all swimming in the same waters, but when somebody gets angry, we'll turn the television down, right? And I'm sorry, you're trying to get my attention, right? So I was inadvertently treating my wife that way. Like, well, unless she's angry or getting to a position where she's got to yell, then we're all good. We're just Charlie Mike. We're continuing the mission here. And I realized, like, man, that's a really terrible thing to do to someone. And it was a game changer inside of our marriage when I, with transparency, said, hey, and this is legit talk right here. I was sitting in Roane's office earlier today. I put some things together, right? Anger was the predominant method of being heard for me growing up. And again, I'll include even coaches. Like, as long as the coach isn't yelling at me, we're good, and I said, I want to say inside of my home, speaking of getting emotional, I want to say inside of my home, I don't want to be a man who forces his wife to use anger to be heard. But that's not going to change this afternoon.
That's good.
You're going to have to say things like, please don't make me use anger to be heard or whatever, like for a while it was so basic, and I know our listeners can't see this, but for a while it was so basic. She started doing this, like we were giving each other hand signals. And so to reprogram this stuff, and getting back to the original point of the conversation, to reprogram this stuff to trend towards transparency and awareness. And Eva, I think you're a master at this, of we have to work to set conditions to make this possible. That's what we're actually trying to do here, is to work inside of our marriage to set conditions. That's why you so intuitively a moment ago went to that personal awareness.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, so let's do this. Let's ask this big question, because I know there are men and women listening to this episode, and I think this will be very helpful. And who knows how long this will take to work this out. But from the male point of view, how does this? And I'm just asking for some personal vulnerability. So I guess this is where we say, or I say to the two of you, can I push you a little? Right?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So from the masculine point of view and from the feminine point of view, this discussion and how it works out in your own life, like what are the major points of friction there? What are the major points of freedom there for each of you as you've lived this out over the past number of decades?
Oh yeah. Well,
I think you want to go first?
Yeah, let me I'll get my 2 cents out of the way. But I know for me, just the idea when Eva really began to move away from you're being dishonest, when it was not dishonesty, again, just being dishonest is you ask a question and you lie. I mean, that's the basic definition. But it might be around something around how I felt about something or what I was thought about something. Again, that's withholding or not being transparent. And when Eva began to move away from honest, dishonest to like, I really want to connect and kind of know what's going on, that's just a much easier way to, I can lean into that. And again, my growth has been to initiate those conversations rather than her being the one coming all the time going, hey, I don't feel connected. Can we do Fanos? Because, Ben, we talk about this at deer camp the whole weekend, but this idea of masculinity, I think, can be summed up in kind of one phrase, is to initiate, maybe one word, to initiate, and I always put the little phrase, relationally and emotionally. And if I am doing that, I'm moving out of withholding. I'm moving away from not talking. I'm moving into sharing and connection. And so it's just thinking about it in terms of, I want to initiate with my life partner, my intimate partner, the love of my life. I want to initiate relationally, emotionally. Maybe that could be a good practice for us men.
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for sharing that. On the female side of the fence, as a betrayed partner, I like to hear when Roane, like, let's say we do a Fanos and we get to S, we check in with spirituality and sobriety. I think Roane's very transparent in when he says where he is in his sobriety. And then he'll also add, he'll tell me where he is, what's going on with him in sobriety. And then and what he's going to do about it, if he needs to do something about it. He may say, hey, we use a scale 1 to 5, 5 meaning I'm sober, 1 meaning I've had a slip in some way. He may be at a 2 or a 3, and I know what that means. For him, that means he's struggling with some intrusive thoughts, and he'll say, "But I'm calling so and so, but I'm going to lunch with so and so." I mean, to me, that's very transparent. It's vulnerable, and on my side of the fence, as the female partner, I will check in the same way, in really around my fear or the story in my head. I may be at a 2 or a 3 too, but this is what I'm going to do. Or, hey, I talked about this at group the other night, and I really got some good feedback around it, and this is what I've really made it okay in my mind about. Is this true? Something like that. Just really being vulnerable. Just about my own shortcomings, around my tendency to want to control, my tendency to get real busy, my tendency to overwork, my tendency to not rest, my tendency to put too much on my plate. I've got a lot of areas that I can be very transparent about. And Roane really and truly has proven to be a safe person for me over the years, in that he doesn't try to fix me. He really can lean in, and he doesn't give advice unless I ask him. He used to preach to me a lot, but now he doesn't do that anymore. He doesn't do that anymore. He stopped. That was really trying to fix.
Well, it goes back to the episode we did on churchianity, and I used to, we had to do it at the family table at lunch, at mealtime, and I would always have a Bible lesson. Roe and Josh and Eva, in my mind, sitting at my feet.
The kid side.
Yeah, sitting at my feet, just willing, just so wanting to learn, and the reality of that is they would throw food at me and yell at me to shut up, stop it. That's how that went.
I said to him for years and years, I did not sign up to be a pastor's wife. I don't want to be a pastor's wife. But I think I have given you the best compliment over the last few years, when Rone's done several funerals. He did my dad's funeral, and he's married several people, and really a lot of people he's married, and I'll lean over.
Not married too. I did the wedding. I just did the wedding.
Yeah, we got it. We understood.
Clarify.
Say that. I'll lean over to whomever I'm sitting next to, and I'll say, I like being a pastor's wife now.
Wow. There's a sentence I never thought I would hear on the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast.
He is not. He's never been a pastor, and he doesn't want to. But he does. But one of our sons calls him Father Abraham. He's the father of many sons.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully said. So, look, before we wrap up today, there's one little corner I would like to sweep that emerged here at the very end, and that is that transparency begets transparency. That it's kind of how that works. I mean, it's akin to Brené's teaching on vulnerability. But as I become transparent, then there's something in the human heart that desires to respond to transparency with transparency.
That's right.
If we're in a good and healthy or growing place. But I am sensitive, as we're recording this, to maybe a partner who's trying this and has been trying this, and is met with the stonewalling, or is met with the anger, or is met with the avoidance. What can we say to encourage those couples that I think maybe just neutrally we could say they're mismatched here? What's a step one? I mean, I understand that healthy doesn't stay with sick, right? But if we're two people trying to figure out this transparency thing, what do we do? And my particular sensitivity is, and this is probably completely chauvinistic, but my impression is women are going to take to this a little faster. How do we navigate that space? Just as we're wrapping up today, just some words of encouragement.
Oh, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because especially the last part of it, women are better at this, quite honestly, and it has to do with our brain structure. And Roane mentioned it earlier, our hippocampus is twice as large. It's where memory and emotion are stored. So a female brain is going to catch on to this, is going to be able to really know how to do this intuitively, more so than a male brain. I really, after working with men for all the years that we have, I really do. It is, how do I say this? Men have a lot of shortcomings emotionally. And I don't say that to be funny. I don't mean it. I don't mean it to be funny at all. It is true.
We laugh because we recognize the truth in your statement, ma'am.
Yeah. And I have sons. And I have one grandson. And there is just such a huge difference between male and female. Now, like Roane, we mentioned this, I don't know if it's in this episode or in another episode, but what two things that we always look for are willingness. And we used to say honesty. I want to change it to transparency now. But willingness and transparency are two really important things. He may not ever arrive emotionally to be able, but you look for action. Is he trying? Does he come back a second time? Or does he come the first time and we call it bids for connection. Look for those bids of connection where he's trying to connect with you. He may not do it perfectly. And when you're, especially for a partner, when you're in a triggered state, emotionally dysregulated, there's really and truly not enough he can do. There's really not. There's not enough balm for that hurting heart. And that is really where you've got to have a community of women who really understand you as a woman. And you also, your connection with the Lord, that he is your rock. He is who you lean on and find your security there and not in this person.
So we would say collectively to wrap the episode, just keep showing up. Keep showing
consistent action over time.
But if you don't see willingness, and you don't see transparency, give it time, but you'll get to where you need to be. You'll make decisions that you need to make.
And we often, we talk about the three things that kill intimacy. Secret, silence, and judgment. I don't know if I want to change it, call it something else, but I think just on the individual path of growth, the thing that we all have to really, if we're going to make this stuff work and we want to create because you got to have a safe place for somebody to go vulnerable, right? And I believe that the three things, it should be, we need to, there can be no denial, there can be no blame, and there can be no judgment. And that's going to get you to the show up place. But the denial and the blame, and certainly judgment, that's really, that's more on my individual side of the fence. I've got to be working through, and again, so often with partners, because again, they didn't sign up for this. You did this. This is why we're in this place. Well, that's a blame place, and that's not going to get you where you want to be. And then the denial that is so common is like, brokenness meets brokenness. And so the partner has to begin to look at some point, we got to do the, comfort the hurt and all of that. But at some point, you've got to begin to look at your own brokenness and begin to really do your individual work in order for all this to come together.
Yeah, you bring up something really interesting. I want to put a little pin in the conversation here because I've been thinking about it for the past 15 minutes. We're talking about a lot about growth and what happens after trauma has occurred. Is growth possible? How do we get to grow? So let's put a pin there. We'll join back up in our next episode and have a really, really interesting conversation around post-traumatic growth.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.